we are recording, so we can get started. I think, Youngshell, you've got 2 items on the agenda if you want to kick it off the first one.
Yes. So first one is basically the PR that clarifying the output order of around like joins. So I got approval from David and Weston.
I think we just need, if I remember correctly, that's is that free approvals required, Weston, for changes to core stuff?
Oh, if it's a
Free
breaking
approval. So basically, I can take a look at it. I just made some on a plate, but
Okay.
it looks I can probably just rubber stamp it, or I'll take a look at it.
Okay.
And once that's in, we can merge it. Yeah. So core changes require free approvals, which is why it hasn't been merged in yet.
or breaking changes, I think. I think regular core changes is just 2, but I could be wrong.
Process or governance modifications. Oh no, yeah, you're right. Format specification modifications, including making extension changes. Oh yeah, so that requires 2. So actually, it is mergeable now. So we can actually just do that.
Okay.
If you want.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's one. So I have like 3 things like floating around. One is the fetch rel. The other one is like adding a cube and roll up to the grouping. Third one is the around like type variation. So for the type variation, I just created issues. So if you have time, like you can take a look. It's mostly around like function behaviors, revising the based on or clarifying around like function behaviors. I called like 3 problems. 2 of them are like a must. Must means like to actually implement whatever specified as of today. We need to resolve the two things. The third one is basically it's more controversial because like Substrate made a decision that go like strongly typed and no funky things, but this is like basically trying to, can we like reduce the toil using type variation by introducing some simple dynamic dispatching, let's say. So I mean, if you read the issue, it'll be very clear where I borrowed the term. So surprise, a new mode. So there's basically inherits, and then there's a separate. I'm basically coined a term like extends, that's sitting between. So it will like, yeah, we're mostly extending the behavior of the base type, but if you have a specialization, like you should pick it. So that's basically the idea. But as we all know, if you're starting to doing that, then okay, now we need to do, the resolution is more complicated than strict resolution. So that there's, I think, and it actually clashes with the one of the principle in the Substrate. So yeah, so that's why I'm feeling like this is it's worth to debate, I think, or revisit the issue. So that's one. Regarding fetch rel, so in the previous meeting, Jack was more leaning to more composable things, and also the idea of what if we adding this let's say special equality of the keys that basically the last row can compare. So it's more of like more Lego style like building block. But as I think more about it, basically, well, what is equality? Basically, that's boils down to the point. So what is equality? Equality, simply just listing the field is not enough, because, well, your equality, basically, equality equal is different from the equality that we are using for sort and grouping. And well, the sort can also include collation. Then the equality is not actually like simple. It's almost identical to the sort spec, essentially. You really need to. So basically, one of the Jack's idea is like, okay, if you know that, like, what are those like equality that the last flow needs to keep checking with the tie. Ingo, this is actually one of my proposal to adding fetch rel with ties. So if there are like so if there's a fetch and with ties, then if the last row and the following row have equivalent in terms of the key, then it will the fetch rel will basically keep returning, keep yielding the rows that as long as the keys are equivalent, sort keys are equivalent. So that was the context. And yeah, so well, the bottom line is I think I need to think more on that. Wish Jack is here to actually bounce back idea a few more minutes, but yeah, I'll come back with the new proposal, let's say. Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
the strongest opinions about it, as I expressed last time, I haven't really been keeping up with the discussion, but I can try and follow up on it a bit more, I guess.
Are you looking for input, or do you have a question about which approach to take? Or
I'm just basically reporting the state of that whatever proposal. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely more open PRs that I would like on the core spec, including 2 of mine that I need to go back and update. Yeah, that's probably not for this meeting. Are there any other topics of active discussion today?
Maybe I can coin like one more thing.
Yeah, no, one more thing if you got
so
something.
I incinerated the Slack with the post-join filter. And thank you, Weston, for taking a step. I think it's a very, very, very clear. The proposal is very clear. And one thing that I also mentioned in the PL comments, but do we really need to keep the equi-join in hash and merge join, or can we just drop the equi?
Oh, just in the name itself?
Yeah, the name itself. Because I mean, with the post-join filter there, it is not really equi-join. I mean, it is just hash join. Yeah.
That's a fair point.
Well, it has an it needs to have an equi part, right? Otherwise, you can't use the hash join.
Correct.
Yeah, it couldn't be.
But that's like by definition of the hash join. Like
Yeah.
You have to something to hash on.
Yeah.
Well, I probably short circuit this discussion, which is like you don't generally make. You could argue name change and protobuf is not backwards incompatible, but with some, like if it's used in any relation somewhere, for example, it could be a breaking change.
They're not backwards compatible because we also, I think, conform to JSON compatibility, and if you change the name in JSON, it's very unhappy.
Yes, so we don't make backwards incompatible changes for convenience or aesthetics purposes. We may someday for like a 1.0 release. But that's been the policy we followed. So there would have to be.
But do we actually call like hash equi-join in the proto? We don't, right?
I thought that was what the message was like. If it's not, then yeah, definitely we should update the.
Yeah, this is hash join rel and merge join rel. Like there's no equi.
Then yes, we should definitely fix the spec part.
Yeah, okay. So
Okay, I didn't realize that either. The spec says the hash equi-join join operator. Is that what you aren't happy with?
yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, the written spec. Okay, yeah, we can. Oh, yeah, it's easy. Yeah.
Just dropping
But-
equi from the doc. Yeah.
We could call out what Ingo said in the description as well. Just kind of
Mhm.
make it clear that, like this. Well, because there will need. Because actually, I think you said that hash. It isn't joining now, but it is still kind of, because the way it's constructed, you have the key part and then the post join filter. So if you have no key part whatsoever, then I guess it would devolve into a cross product. I'm not sure it's defined.
It should be. It should. Yeah, devolve into cross products. Yes. If there's no join key, hash join true means like everyone joins everyone. Yeah.
Okay. We should clarify in the spec as well, like this fact either way. Like either if there's no join key, it's invalid, and therefore this is like an equi join, or if there's no join key, this should be a cross product, so that consumers, just so the corner case is clear.
Yeah.
I suspect there are some consumers that would err in this case.
You can make the argument that if there's no equity, like there's no key, you should just send a cross join relation and have the system do it that way.
Do we actually call out like there must be at least like one key in the hash join?
I guess I don't think we do either way. My point was more like, since we don't call out today, it's the specific behavior.
So I mean, like
No, the
keys-
spec of hash join rel says one or more keys to join on.
right.
Okay.
I guess we technically say one or more, so I guess the behavior of 0 is UBI or unspecified.
No, it's an error.
Should be an error, yeah.
Well, my opinion. My read of that would be an error.
I would make it an error. I think hash join, if nothing, is confusing. And if you really want to cross join, just use cross join rel.
Especially since we're in like the physical relations here. So
Mhm.
we're not necessarily trying to be easy to write or universal.
Yeah.
But I still have
Yeah.
no problem taking equi out of the name, since it doesn't match what's in the protobuf. I think those two should match.
That's good. Yeah. Same goes for like merge join. It's I think it's copy and pasted almost. Yeah.
Do we allow breaking changes if you make, like, if we deprecate something? So if we introduce like a, sorry, this is a separate discussion. I should probably have it. Can let the current one finish. I don't have anything else to say on post join filters.
No.
This comes up because actually looking at the joins, I was like, oh yeah, one of the things I want to do is introduce a new join enum singular message to replace all the old ones, and I would probably want to do it. I thought about just replacing it in itself, but that raises a couple questions about whether or not it's binary compatible everywhere and it's going to work. And the safer way to do it would be to add a redundant field like join type, which uses the common shared enum everywhere, have a couple releases with that in place. Well, introduce that, deprecate the old one, have a couple releases where they both coexist, and then delete the old one, which would be a breaking change, but would provide like a migration thing off. So I don't know if we should. I don't know if breaking changes are something we never want to do, as long as we can provide a way forward for consumers to handle both and fix it. But yeah, that was just kind of a question that I had.
Yeah. It is too unfortunate that the tags are actually different. I didn't realize that the tags are actually different from this like a join rel and the rest. So that means like I mean it's not binary compatible. That's too unfortunate. But I mean, yeah, why not? I think like migration passes makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we don't rush it or whatever, like a month or two, there should be plenty of time to.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. As long as no one's like strictly opposed, we can have them coexist for a long time. It just becomes confusing. We'll just set both everywhere.
Yeah.
And that actually brings me up to another item, which is like Substrate protobuf exists now as a repo, so it's a standalone repo where you can put protobufs in. This came up because the way we were doing it in Go is known to cause problems as per Google Docs, which we discovered at work internally about 3 weeks ago. Right now, there's only Go protobufs in there, but there's nothing stopping us from adding like Rust or Java bindings, and then maybe having the other libraries also depend on that. So if you're a consumer, say you have Substrate Java, you can say Substrate Java, this version has this version internally of the protobufs. Maybe you want to use a more recent version, which is compatible. And that might be a nice way to let users pick the version of the spec they're doing. But just wanted to highlight that it exists.
I think for C++, that's encouraged as well because it's difficult in C++ to have multiple instances of the same because they use some static state in there, and so they will conflict with each other. So for Rust, I don't see much advantage. Because
I think you could do the same thing where you'd have the Rust library depend on a version, and if you want to depend on a more recent version of the spec in your system.
I think you can do that either way. Like you could just drop the protos in here. I mean, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I want to use the library to build more recent versions of. Or you want to use the library, but also have like a more recent version of the protobuf code. It's not manually generated.
Yeah.
But yeah, it exists. There's still some work required. I haven't automated the releases of the Go stuff yet. I have to do that. I'm just doing it. I have a script that does it by hand, or that does it that I'm running whenever we release a new version. That requires more work, but yeah, it exists. So yeah, if I want to put C++ in there or Java or anything else, like if someone needs it, it's there. It just needs to be done. Yeah, that's kind of it for topics. I know there was a big discussion about name structs, but I don't know if any of the stakeholders involved in that are here to discuss it. I haven't been following that thread, to be honest. I've been looking at protobuf all week, but
I think the most relevant concern I can see in there would be if a function or relation was defined in such a way that the behavior, the return type would depend on the name, then we would have a problem. I think that's what
I don't think that's the case anywhere.
Yeah, I think they were arguing that that was the case for coalesce in the way that Spark interpreted it in this kind of corner case with arrays.
It's because the coalesce was basically doing the error checking on the types after it got back. So it basically went from a SQL to Substrate to data fusion. And when it got to data fusion, they were doing a check on the data type that they didn't need to do.
Yeah, so I'm not convinced that it is a problem. But I guess, like you said, we don't have the relevant stakeholders for real discussions. So maybe we should just pile on one.
But then there's the question beyond. Once we get an agreement that it's not necessary, then the question comes about round tripping, right? Because you do want this information so that you can get back the original structure and SQL and all that stuff. So they do belong in hints of some sort. They just don't belong in the
I guess
as required data.
equal desirable. I guess it's one of those things where, like, in testing, I found it's useful in some cases to be able to do that, but I don't know if generally the case that
Can the name destruct represented as a just map, just the explicit key value pair, and then when you need to like convert it back, like you can just throw it as a map. Well, then but then like yeah, you need.
because
You need
the issue then is that
order.
every field reference in Substrate is ordinal based. So if you have a map, they don't line up anymore. At least if I'm thinking of the name struct in the presence of like the read, where like the input types have to be like I think Substrate is explicitly chosen to be ordinal based and not name based,
Right. Yeah.
which actually works really well for some things. I know Data Fusion has issues with it, but sometimes you write a single query that references the same field twice, and it's like it's the same name, and because you're a name based system, you can't handle that. Actually, it comes up an arrow. Whereas an ordinal system doesn't care; it just says duplicate field. That's fine. Output, put names on it. Like there are benefits to being not name based in some cases, but historic, I guess Calcite's not name based. I know Data Fusion is because the consumer required a lot of work to make sure that we don't accidentally duplicate names, and that definitely makes the consumers more work. But I think if we were to be name based and versus ordinal based, other consumers would have to do similar work. So it's just a matter of who do we inconvenience.
Yeah.
Separate topic. Maybe I'll send this out in the mailing list, but just curious of like, is Substrate the spec? Like, what is missing for Substrate the spec to be 1.0?
Complex types are still not well working.
Complex types, you said?
Yeah, and structs, maps, and lists have some functionality, but it's not everything's working. You can sort of use the get field, but you can't use. I pretty much had to stop there when anytime that I'm trying to do something and saying, okay, well, when we get the spec fleshed out, then I can do the rest.
Is there something missing for the spec, or is that missing in like consumer implementations?
A lot of the consumer implementations are missing it, but I think there's not many functions that are there. I do think most of the base relations and that kind of support is present. So I'd say mostly it's functions and support.
Okay. I guess that, yeah, another one that jumps to mind would be collation and clearly defined listing rules or ordering rules.
Yeah, collation and ordering are both also on the list.
It's a fun question I hadn't thought about, like what's remaining.
Like, do we want to make a drive to wrap these things up so that we can
1.0 by the end of the year?
Yeah,
That would be cool. Because what we hopefully do is we add these features, we sit on it for a little bit, we plan and do, while that's happening, plan on the cleanups on the side in a branch. And then suddenly cut over to the quote unquote clean version.
Yeah. Welcome, Bryce.
Hey, hi everyone. I think I've met only a few people, but thanks. Sorry I'm joining so late.
Very good.
No problem. You want to give a brief introduction of who you are?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm Bryce. I work at Voltron Data, have for a few years. I've sent a couple of PRs to Substrate-ish things. Not really a Substrate user, but I'm trying to help out where I can. And I had an agenda item for later that I would love to add once the current discussion is over.
Feel free to add it to the agenda thing on top of the document.
Yeah.
Right. I think we're talking about 1.0. Do we want to make a drive? Would it make sense to? Would we want to do a like 1.0 where we deprecate and remove all the things, or would we want to do a? Would it make sense to deprecate everything before 1.0? Have like a pre 1.0 release where like all of the bad stuff is basically gone, and then 1.0 not breaking.
Well,
Yeah. I guess that's an open question. I'm not answering now.
We can create a branch, and the branch could be 0.9 or something, or 0.999 or whatever it was to be, and then we could be fiddling with there, and then 1.0 would be the cutover, and essentially the same as 0.999.
It'd be a gradual migration to 1.0, I think, no matter what. Like, even if you have a 0.9 and you wait 2 months, and then I guess the advantage there would be when you announce, hey, we've hit 1.0, you can say these consumers all support it at roughly the same time. Instead of like, we've hit 1.0, over the next few months, consumers will begin to support it. So I like the idea.
I guess the question is, here's a question, I guess maybe the question I have is, for Substrate 1.0, do we expect that, hey, this can represent every single query under the sun? Or are we on that? Yeah, that's a non-goal. So I'm like, I don't know what our definition of 1.0 is, but I think that one would be somewhat impossible. But that brings me up like, okay, if we know it's not going to be able to do everything, what is our policy for like breaking changes going forward? Like, when are we going to release 2.0? Is it going to be in 2 weeks when we realize, oh, we should fix this? Or is it going to be like in some cadence cycle?
Well, there's I think those are two different things. Like,
yeah,
admitting that we don't cover certain queries is different than saying we will need breaking changes. Like one thing I would like to is kind of on my, I don't know, at this point, bucket list is getting a search relation into like a logical plan for data fusion and into Substrate and so on. But I wouldn't block 1.0 on that. But that could be like a 1.1 or 1. Whatever.
I guess there are like additive features that we can add in.
Yeah. So I guess a bigger question is, hopefully what we're saying with 1.0 is that the kind of the relations we have are pretty solid, and we don't think they're going to need breaking changes.
Dave was asking, like, should we have like effectively function catalogs as a pre 1.0 feature? Which I'm in favor of only because that's what I'm supposed to be working on right now at work for things that we want to use internally, that also open source, except for prototype issues. But that is a thing that I would like to have done by like end of this quarter potentially, or proposed.
How about let's make a GitHub issue or discussion and send out something to the mailing list and start collecting what we want for 1.0, and then I guess that could be task one, is identify what.
Yeah, and then we could start building a checklist, like fixing time literals and all that stuff.
That's a great idea.
Right, I'll take that action item.
I can probably tag you from how tags work. There we go. Signed. Awesome. Yeah, okay. There's probably lots of things we want. I think following up on the mailing list is a good idea, but no, that seems reasonable. Awesome. I think there's another item, unless we want to keep talking about this for now. Cool. Substrate fiddle.
Yeah, that was me. I took advantage of the fact that I had a minute and saw you meeting and people were on the call, and I have been working on this recently, but there is a sort of pretty well defunct project that I know Weston knows a decent amount about. Substrate Fiddle. This is like what was at substratefiddle.com at some point in the past. I will speak, but Weston can feel free to jump in. I believe my employer Voltron Data drove all of that work, and my employer Voltron Data also owns the domain name Substrate Fiddle. I just noticed at some point that WASM stuff, browser WASM stuff, got better. Various things could be done in browsers that we couldn't do certain time periods ago, and I was thinking that we could rewrite the Substrate Fiddle code base, which was kind of complicated, into a browser-only thing. We don't need anything outside the browser to validate Substrate plans and produce validation results. And so I started hacking on that last week, and I've got Substrate validation working in WASM, and I have Data Fusion producing and consuming Substrate. It's pretty crappy, but it, of course it all works because I know Data Fusion has worked on WASM support. So I got to be thinking, like, what's the product that is Substrate Fiddle, and would there be interest from the Substrate community in having something Fiddle-ish for Substrate? That's the question. Again.
I can speak to my original goals, which I think we fell short of, was in equivalence to SQL Fiddle. And I mean, ideally, I think the goal was sort of to reduce barriers, the barrier to entry to the learning curve for Substrate by having a website where people can go, they can type some SQL query, and they can see the Substrate plan, validation also, as well as ideally possibly being able to like execute it in sort of the same way that SQL Fiddle works. This was maybe, selfishly driven by my own experiences of like the majority of me learning SQL has been me writing queries on SQL Fiddle, because I don't usually have like a big database lying around that I want to query. It's more like, oh, I'm trying to prototype or design something, and having something like that is very useful. Separate from that, I'll add someone on Slack, I'll try and find the link, just posted a really cool Substrate visualization library.
I saw that, and that's kind of what we got thinking about this too, because there's so much you can do for like education for Substrate. You can do it entirely in a browser, which is nice.
But I think it would be very cool to, like, I didn't walk away from Substrate Fiddle thinking, oh, this isn't a good idea. I walked away from it thinking, gosh, I wish I could have finished that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Voltron does own the URL, the domain name. We can either ask them to give it back or just do something else.
Or host it under like some substrate.io sub thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fiddle.substrate.io.com.
Yeah, no, the Gabriel's Substrate viz is something he built as part of him learning Substrate while working on Substrate stuff at Datadog, actually. But it's a weekend thing he did, not a work thing.
So I think that what I sort of carved out, I talked about it with a colleague, and I kind of carved out, like, at the very least, I think that I could wrap the code base up that I have and do something that's more or less the same as what Substrate Fiddle was, which is, I think we could, I've like, it's dead, but I think you kind of resurrect it. I think you basically could put in Substrate JSON representation and get validation results, which is not, a whiz-bang demo, but that can be like a V1, is just get back to where we have the same sort of functionality as Substrate Fiddle was, entirely in WASM with an open source tool chain that others can build and Substrate team can own, whatever.
This is entirely in WASM, like a static site in the backend.
Yeah, like I don't have a great demo. If I probably screen shared, I would think I would be stuck with my Rust build times because Rust WASM builds take forever. But I can share a demo once I kind of wrap it up. But basically, it's just all Rust WASM pack, and yeah, with minimal modifications to the crates, to Substrate validator crate, and minimal modifications to Data Fusion WASM. So it's a little bit, messy right now, but
This is
Yeah.
all Rust code.
sorry.
This is all Rust code
Yeah,
with maybe like a JavaScript shell.
yeah. It's just what, if you're not familiar with WASM pack, it's just a Rust crate, but it gives you a proper WASM build, but then gives you the JS shim code for free. So it's the easiest way for me to get it working. But I think that something like just how Substrate Fiddle was could be pretty simple. But if once you started getting into the question of like executing stuff, you start to want to have like web workers involved possibly, and the architecture gets a little more complicated. It all stays within the context of browser and WASM, but the quick prototype kind of starts to look like a real software engineering effort once you start to want to get Data Fusion execution and DuckDB execution, or whatever you want. But yeah, it's all Rust right now, static site.
So if we get 3 SMC votes, we can make a contrib repository, and then we can make you owner of it. And then you would just need one other person to kind of help you with PRs getting merged in. I mean, I'd volunteer to review things if you want that.
Mhm.
If it's not ready yet, like you think you've got a lot you want to do before you want to start requiring a couple of reviews, I think that's fine too. But
Okay.
I'm excited.
Maybe what I'll do, since it's hard for people on the call to visualize like what they'd be, agreeing to or seeing to, I'll try and wrap it up to where it can be, a link can be shared, and I can share it in Substrate Slack and people can poke at it. I think some of the larger, they're not large, but things that are important is I've currently got things all building off of things I haven't upstreamed to the Substrate validator or upstreamed to Data Fusion that I may or may not need. So basically, I'm using local dirty copies of those Substrate of those Rust crates to build everything. And so there's upstream first, and then build demo off of actually published crates versus unpublished crates, because I don't think we want to get in the business of doing that. So, okay, yeah. So I think I have my next steps. I'll just keep plugging away with my free time. All right. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's all the topics we had, and we had a bunch of them, and we can fill 20 minutes if you want, or we can call it. But if people have anything else they want to discuss, so speak now.
Nothing here.
Cool. Yeah, we'll release you all 20 minutes early. Good, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Are you stopping the recording?